Welcome everyone to the Q&A session with Paul Chek. I've got Paul on the line. Paul, how are you doing?
Better than most, I bet.
I'm repping my Chek Institute shirt today because I'm so excited for this one. I can't wait.
Good.
What have you been up to today, Paul?
Whew. Well, I just finished a nice intense lunge workout in the warm sun over here, and I've been working on building our new coaching program so that all the Chek HLCs and exercise coaches onwards will go through a block of training specifically on how to coach and how to change behavior, because I've continued to see that we need more emphasis on the actual practice of coaching as opposed to just having all the ideas in your head and telling them to people and then having frustration because they're not implementing them. I'm working with Mike Salimi on the development of our new kettlebell certification program we're hoping to have out before the year's over. Writing lots, working with lots of clients, coaching people through all sorts of interesting things, and so between coaching and training athletes and all those things, trying to find time each day for some Tai Chi and infrared sauna meditation, and Angie's on the road teaching in Sweden, so I'm the caretaker of her beautiful little doggie, and she's right here behind me hanging out because she wants to join the webinar, or the question and answer, because she's actually the only dog who's HLC 1 and HLC 2 qualified.
Well, there you go. Did not know that.
Yeah, she's sat through all those classes from front to back, so she knows her stuff pretty good.
Must be a very healthy little dog then, right?
Yeah.
So there's kind of two reasons why I reached out to you to do this Q&A, Paul. I mean, obviously we're doing this as a wrap-up to the female hormone solution. There was a lot of stuff that was contained in that summit, and I think it's important for us to be able to answer people's questions, but I think also you've put, well, I don't think, I know because I've been told about it, you've put together a system for people that it really kind of spells out things quite easily, which is called the 1, 2, 3, 4, to overcoming addiction, obesity, and disease.
Yeah.
That title maybe is a little bit misleading because I think, and having been coached by you so many times before, that program is something that just about anyone can go through. So what is the 1, 2, 3, 4?
Well, in essence, in a nutshell, I spent a lot of, well, pretty much my whole life, but prior to the 1, 2, 3, 4 system, prior to when I developed it, I kept running into challenges with my advanced students. I would find out as they went higher and higher in their levels of training that concepts that I taught at the basic levels were still not being applied and or understood. And if you look at all my teachings, it's a pretty significant amount. I mean, from PPS training to HLC training to Chek practitioner training to all the other things that I've produced. It's about 7 years for a person to go through PPS training, HLC training, and Chek practitioner training if they go at a fairly normal pace. And so I realized what was happening was, much to my chagrin, I was producing what I would consider to be highly intellectual people that were very smart and knew the answers to a lot of things and had an intellectual idea of how everything fit together and could talk about it quite effectively. But when it came to actually solving cases, and as you can imagine, with over 10,000 students, I'm a consultant to a huge number of them, so when people aren't getting better, they want to know why, so oftentimes they hire me to look at all the paperwork and sometimes turn the client over to me because they're just stuck. And what I kept finding is that almost all the time, the reason clients weren't getting better is because very basic, essential stuff was being assumed, not really being looked at, not being followed up with, or it was being ignored because it was so obvious that it becomes ignored, like drinking water. You know, people think, what the hell can water do? You know, it's just water. So I got to the point where I had to synthesize my teachings into a working system so that people knew the essential steps to go in, just like I did with the Chek totem pole, so that people knew how to perform a physical assessment. And if you didn't have that knowledge, you were at great risk of making big mistakes and treating symptoms, not causes. So I meditated on it, and I'd studied a course in herbology where I learned that Hippocrates had a 3-doctor model. And they didn't say anything in the course except that Hippocrates believed that all problems could be solved through the application of one of 3 doctors, which he called Dr. Quiet, Dr. Happiness, and Dr. Diet. Now, naturally, 2,370-something years ago, people weren't so sedentary. I mean, just to wash your clothes back then would have been equivalent to a workout today. So immediately when I was listening to this training on herbology, I said, well, that's a great concept, and I can totally see how simple and how powerful that is, because that is the foundation of most people's problems, but he's missing movement. So what I did was I took that impetus, which triggered off an avalanche of intuitive insights into me, and literally took one sentence from a herbology course and built an entire system out of it, because, with my level of knowledge of each of those things, I could easily see where that had to go in the structure of what I would call the wheel of life. So what I did was I created a living philosophy that is also a methodology. And it's very simple, and it organizes itself by first identifying what is it that you're willing to change for. What are you motivated by? What are you motivated to heal, grow, and become for, above and beyond your motivation to have your cookies, your sugar, your coffee, your late nights, your overspending on your credit card, or whatever might be the way you're expressing your creative energy, but may not be as creative in the direction that you want it to go, right? Once I had the dream, then I know that the whole universe is created of 2 fundamental forces called yin and yang, or the female and the male. And therefore, everything that we do as a therapist has something to do with balancing those 2 forces. Now, that's, the Tai Chi symbol is very, very simple, but it's extremely deep. It's an archetype, so it contains the whole story of the universe and life itself. So I've probably spent 20 years at least studying just that symbol and its meanings, and have read countless scholarly books and books by sages and studied with people. And so I basically took that and said, okay, what we got to do with all this assessment stuff is we've got to make some decisions. What are they doing too much of? What are they doing too little of? And what do we have to do in order to balance that? A, to get them to have optimal baseline health, and B, then progress them upward towards specific conditioning to achieve a specific objective, be it climb a mountain, play a sport, be a housewife, a construction worker, etc. And then once you've got that dream and you've got the assessment that shows you, using comprehensive Chek and HLC assessments, where your client's at physiologically and psychologically, then there's naturally choices to be made. So step 3 is, which choices are you willing to make? And then as the therapist, it's my job to specifically prioritize those choices based on my assessment, so that it's clear which choices are going to have the greatest impact for relative to time spent, energy spent, and potentially money spent. Then the 4 doctors is the system by which I create the values that are dream affirmative. So the 4 doctors is your values around quiet or rest, movement of body, mind, and emotions. Dr. Diet is all about individualized eating and how to customize that person's diet to meet their individual biochemical needs. So when the person's gone through my system, they know what their dream is, they know where they're out of balance, they know what they've got to do to fix it, because that's the therapist's job. They know which choices they're willing to make. They have a prioritized list of objectives, and they have a set of values that they create specifically to support their choices so that they're dream affirmative. Once I started teaching my students that, it was like somebody lifted the wool off their eyes. All of a sudden, all this complex information fell into a flow. And I taught them the key questions to ask and the key things to focus on, and it flowered out. And I believe if it was the only thing I ever created in my lifetime on this planet, I feel that I've accomplished something with that alone.
Yeah.
So really, that's the basis. And, you know, people come to me from all over the world with every kind of mental, emotional, physical, hormonal, psychological, metaphysical, past life, current life, entity, parasite, fungus, brokenness, worn out that, sad this, ADD that, OCD, whatever it might be, right? I get it all. And my point is I've applied the model in every possible arena, and it works extremely well because it actually deals with the most fundamental essentials of the human life, and it interfaces perfectly with the world. In other words, anybody that's following the model is already part of world healing, because once you start living your dream and truly doing the things you got to do to grow into your dream and become your dream, you're moving forward in evolution, in personal, professional, and spiritual evolution. You're becoming more aware of yourself. You're becoming more aware of the choices you're making, the food you're eating. Your behavior changes. Your emotions calm down. Your mind becomes sharper. You make better choices. You buy better things and support ethical companies. So it was really my goal to bridge the thing we call pain with the thing that we call happiness and wholeness. And for me, it's not about getting rid of pain. I think that's the biggest mistake that the medical system has ever sold us. It's about helping people realize that their pain is serving them a function of letting them know the response to the choices they've made. Getting rid of pain is like covering your dashboard so you can't see how fast you're going, what your engine temperature is, what your RPMs are, and all the essentials that you need to know to operate a vehicle safely and effectively. So I prefer to give people tools, and I think it's very exciting when they realize they can get rid of their pain with something as simple as drinking water, a cold shower, stretching, mobilizing. And once they have it in the perspective, and they realize they're doing it for themselves because they have chosen to become and to experience something, not they're just doing it to get rid of the pain so they can go back to their life that's driving them crazy, they're unfulfilled and unsatisfied anyhow. So that's really a sort of a synthesis of how I built it and why I built it. And just to sort of cap that off, I knew I'd done the right thing because I started having high-level students, even level 4 Chek practitioners. Even one of my instructors came to me after reading the 4 Doctors ebook and said, you know what, Paul, I really understand how to eat, move, and be healthy a lot better now. Right? And I have level 4 practitioners that have been studying with me for years. So what it showed me is that they had accumulated so much intellectual data and so many lofty concepts that they'd lost touch with how it all works together. So once I started getting reports that it was helping them understand that complicated data and live it better in their own lifetime, then I felt like I'd hit the jackpot. And I can't look back now because I've helped people with every kind of disease and problem known to man using that system.
Yeah. When, you don't know this, but when I was doing your HLC2 course last year, I was sitting down there with a few people. There were chiropractors and physiotherapists and psychologists and whatnot, and they were all talking about, well, you know, we're chiropractors or whatever. We coach people in various different ways, but how do we get this information out to people? You know, what are we supposed to do? And basically between ourselves, we just decided, well, people come to us for a result, and no matter what we do, whether it be a chiropractic treatment or a physical therapy treatment or massage or exercise or whatever, it really has to come back down to these, you know, these 4 steps. If you don't have these 4 steps, then any coaching model is pretty much ineffective. So I think that this is something that everyone should consider looking up and looking into after the female hormone solution. And I spoke Paul's made a very generous offer for everyone who's on the line. He's put together a program which he did many years ago called the 1, 2, 3, 4 to overcoming addiction, obesity, and disease, which, as I said, is a little bit of a misleading title because as health coaches, we all use it to coach our clients to whatever their goal might be. And he's put that together, and he's also put a little discount on it. Well, actually not a little discount. He's taken 50% of the price off. So if you're interested in getting that, you can go to thechek1234.com. That's the CHEK and then the numbers 1234.com, and you can use the code FHS1234, and that'll apply your discount. Now, Paul, we've got a few Q&A questions to get stuck into. Are you ready?
Yeah, just before you do that.
Go for it.
You see that diagram there?
Yeah. If you can go
That's a wheel. Okay, that's a wheel, like a wagon wheel with 4 spokes. Each quarter of the wheel is represented by one of the 4 doctors: quiet, diet, movement, and happiness. Now, in regards to what you were just saying that the therapists were saying in class, if you look at any philosophy in the world, I don't care if it's a religious philosophy, a physical philosophy, anything to do with healthcare or life, if any one of those philosophies is missing one of those components, you have a wheel that now becomes a triangle, and triangles don't roll.
Nope.
So a good example is there's many, many religions in the world that teach you all about what God wants or what God says or what God wants you to eat or whatever, but don't have any exercise component whatsoever. So what do you see? You see people going to churches and they're obese, and they've got all these lofty ideas in their head, but they don't even have the energy to make the spiritual transformation to become godly because there's too much missing. If you've got an exercise philosophy, but you don't have an understanding of why you're exercising, how it contributes to your life, in other words, you don't have a specific dream, then you're just probably exercising to get rid of the pain of your childhood or your relationships, but you don't have any specific outcome, therefore you have no way to measure whether you're moving forward, backwards, or sideways. If you have happiness and diet, but you don't have, and movement, but you don't have quiet, then you just burn yourself out, which is very classic in the Western culture. Everybody's trying to just, become the king and drive the big car, have the big house, wear the clothes. And for what? They're burnt out because they don't have anything inside of themselves. So what you get is, the Michael Jacksons, the Elvis Presleys, and all the rich and famous people that have everything money can buy, but there's something empty inside, and they don't have, a whole philosophy. So my point is, this is a philosophy for living, and all therapy is supposed to support the process of living, and any philosophy that is lacking in one of those key areas will create problems because it won't be self-sufficient. You'll always be dependent upon some doctor or therapist. And my goal with all Chek practitioners and HLC practitioners is to teach the clients to not need us. It is not a business model that is designed to keep people revolving through, what's sometimes referred to as the revolving door, which is a common chiropractic term. It's designed to teach people independence, wholeness, and our marketing is that happy, healthy, whole people are constantly looked at and asked questions, and they become lifetime marketers for us. And that's the difference in my approach. It's not based on a treatment model. It is truly based on a coaching model. So now I'm ready to answer all the questions you want.
All right, let's coach some people. So I promised I'd give priority to the live callers. So the first one we've got here is Donna. She says, I was diagnosed with chronic fatigue syndrome in July 2012 and POTS or postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome August 2014. I've been bedbound 99% of the day and housebound for 2.5 years. Symptoms are fatigue, post-exertion malaise, chest pain, palpitations, weight gain, 25 kilos in 3 years, anxiety, depression, mood swings. Fatigue is so bad I can't be upright for longer than 2 minutes. If I try to increase this, the post-exertion malaise is so severe that I can't move or even talk for hours or days afterwards. Minimal physical activity, stress, mental activity stimulation can increase symptoms. She's sensitive to all medications, supplements, alcohol, caffeine, and they all make her symptoms worse. She's working through your ebook on how to eat, move, and be healthy, but the fatigue is making it difficult to even read and retain information. I also have no energy or motivation. Do you have any advice for me, Paul Chek? And I bet you do.
Yeah.
Okay.
I do. I sure do. What's the lady's name?
Donna.
Donna, my question for you would be, what seemingly inevitable task in your life have you been avoiding? When I hear a case like that, I know there's either a challenging relationship that needs to be resolved, either with mother, father, family, or partner, or I know that somebody's been doing something for a living that is not fulfilling to them, and they think they have to keep doing it to make money, so they convince themselves that they must continue to do that. So there's an unmet task that needs to be honestly looked at here. And this overarching case profile is a classic sign of avoidance. It means that this person has not been listening to the pain teacher for a very long time. My advice would be exactly to get clear on what your dream is and follow. For a person like this, the 1, 2, 3, 4 for overcoming addiction, obesity, and disease is perfect because it takes them through the necessary steps of looking inside of themselves, which requires a person to be very honest. And, you know, the truth is I've seen many patients in my lifetime that found it easier to die than to be honest in relationships, to be honest with themselves. And, you know, another thing that's behind a lot of these cases is this is the classic case of a common Western mother. Many of them are in broken families. The husband's gone, the relationship's broken. You see women trying to take care of all the kids while working at a job or two, and they get burnt out and they feel boxed and trapped. And so we have, the world's full of cases just like this. This is as common as breathing these days. So, it really boils down to some real basic principles. For a person with a case like this, as you can see, almost anything she do exhausts her. Now you have time, and now you can't move. Now you have every reason to meditate and get clear. And my feeling is once you identify what your dream is and what you're willing to change for, when the student is ready, the master always appears. That's just how it works in life. So start with any of the things I teach in the 4-Doctor book. But really, I can tell you that a case like that, the first thing we got to do once we establish a dream and get clear on where the imbalances are at, which can be done even just using How to Eat, Move, and Be Healthy's questionnaires, there's going to need to be a fair bit of effort put into detoxification. I would start with my Healing Fungal and Parasites DVD series because it takes you through a comprehensive expose of the 4 doctors and how to apply them and gives you techniques and tips and all sorts of stuff specifically for cleaning your body out, getting your house right, keep cleaning your environment up. But a case like that, the most important thing you can do is A, remove the offending foods from the diet because that'll keep the immune system taxed all the time. And people that have cases like that often eat piles of junk because they get so addicted to sugar and stimulants to keep functioning. So getting the right amount of water, I would, ideally a person like this needs to be consulted. It needs to consult a skilled practitioner like a holistic lifestyle coach at level 3 at least, because the comprehensive, the complexity of a case like that can be good. The body's always mirroring the mind and the emotions. So, we like to separate the mind and the emotions from the body like they're in some other territory, again, thanks to the medical system and university training. But the body is the physical expression of the mental, emotional being inside of it. So my question is always is what's going on inside that person's thoughts and emotions, because the body is showing what she's creating through her choices. So it's really a matter of getting clear on what a person wants to create and starting where they're willing to make changes. And where I'm saying to make changes right away is follow the 1, 2, 3, 4 for overcoming addiction, obesity, and disease format, because it takes you inside yourself and helps you get clear. 2, the healing fungal and parasite infections teaches you how to reduce the funguses, alter your diet effectively. It suggests cleansing products, and gives you information you need about how to manage your household so you're not just poisoning yourself with all sorts of stuff that's common in a commercial environment. And I think just that enough is, that's enough. That's a lot. The DVD series on the fungal and parasites can be watched just like you're watching television. So it's not like you have to do a bunch of heavy mental work. It's pretty damn obvious when you see me present on it, And hopefully the pictures of the parasites scare the shit out of people so they get busy, because they're real and they do eat you and cause lots of problems. So, without going into the case and breaking it down and spending, hours doing it like I do in holistic lifestyle coach training, those are the basic suggestions. So in review, get honest with the task that you're avoiding. There's something going on. There always is. 2, follow the 4-doctor system. 3, put a list of things together that you're willing to do and start where you're willing to start, even if the best thing you can do is lay in bed and do belly breaths every hour for 10 breaths and drink water and get to bed on time. Any of those changes made with the intention to heal and to achieve a dream is legitimate. And if you can't find the dream, then a person like that has to get clear what their nightmare is, and that becomes the equivalent of the dream. So if her nightmare is chronic fatigue, then her dream is to be free of chronic fatigue. And then follow the steps I just laid out. It's honestly, here's the paradox, and I know you know this from being in my training. The more complicated the patient seems to be, usually the simpler they are to work with, because you got to start with the box stock basics. And what you find is most people with cases like that won't even participate in the basics because there is something they're avoiding. And it could be the responsibility of being healthy. It could be that by being burnt out and tired, she can avoid having to work, and any number of things. I'm not suggesting what it is. I'm just saying I can tell you just as sure as I'm sitting here, there's probably one or multiple issues of avoidance that have led to this need for a tool by which she can avoid participating in the process we call life at some level. But to continue this way just means more of the same, and it gets worse and worse until you're just miserable. And then, we don't need to go any further than that because it's just downhill from there.
Gotcha. Good answer. All right, so I've got a few questions here on the pill. I'm going to give priority to live callers, so for everyone who's listening, if you want to submit a question by chat, you can do that in your little control panel. So I've got one from Caroline. She says, is there a way to get off bioidentical hormones? I've got one from Sarah, who's an HLC1, and she said she came off birth control, which she was on for 10 years. She's rotating her food and eating exceptionally well. Blood work shows all her hormone levels are normal, but she's not getting a period. And I've got one from Bianca, similar kind of story. She says she eats very clean, doesn't have any caffeine. She has fermented foods and bone broth, and she feels like everything's starting to regulate, but she still gets a sore lower back and tender breasts before every period. So it sounds like people are just kind of struggling with getting themselves back to normalcy here after the pill. Have you got any advice there?
Well, yeah. It's not that simple. First of all, the birth control pill and all those chemical birth control agents, whether it be the injectables, they completely screw the whole hormonal system up. I mean, they should be illegal. There's a book called The Bitter Pill by, I believe, Ellen Grant, if I remember, published in England quite some time ago. She was a research physician for the National Institute of Health and was asked by the British government to research the pill before they made it legal. And the book is her research, and she basically was stunned that the government allowed it to be used, and this book will shock you to the core. So some of these changes don't happen quickly once you start normalizing things. And as I say to people, the longer you've been on that pill and the longer you've been sick or out of balance, the longer it takes to get you back in balance. So sometimes it's just a matter of being patient. The other thing is, one of the key things that women overlook very, very frequently, almost consistently, is that they keep doing all these things that are like, take this, do that, do this hormone patch, do this colon cleanse, but they don't look at one of the most important drivers behind that, which is the rhythm of a person's day. And that's the second chakra, the rhythm and flow of your day and the use of your creative sex energy. So what you see is a lot of these perfectionist type females that want to get everything done and be everything for their husband, for their kids, and still want to look good and go to the gym and work the shit out of themselves in the gym and all this stuff, haven't really put two and two together. And two and two is, you have to slow yourself down and follow the rhythms of the sun and the moon. And that means live according to a healthy circadian cycle, and look at the stuff I put in Eat, Move, and Be Healthy in the sleep chapter on circadian rhythms and sleep-wake cycles, and stop trying to be superwoman. You know, the Germans have a term called Powerfrau. They call women that try to do everything Powerfraus, and they say, get out of the way of the Powerfraus. And our culture's full of them, you know. So one of the most important things is to simplify a person's life. And remember, perfection's not achievable, and it's not something that you want to achieve, because perfection doesn't move. If the world was perfect, nothing would happen, and we'd all be bored to death, and we'd start making it imperfect by doing the things that we're doing now. What's more important than perfection is to be a whole person, to have a sense of roundness to you, to, you know, not be so fixated on things, to you know, as Osho would say, be willing to watch the grass grow instead of constantly having to get that lawnmower out and trim and hedge all the time so that your neighbor thinks your yard looks better than theirs, or whatever the game is. Then there's all sorts of very, very dysfunctional applications with exercise. Women beat the hell out of themselves. They either don't do enough or they just do too much. You know, it's only a handful of people in the world that are balanced in their use of exercise. So again, I see all sorts of women taking all these supplements and going from doctor to doctor and getting all these bags of pills and patches, but their exercise programs are not conducive to hormonal balance. You know, women are typically cardiovascular junkies at large, and cardiovascular exercise has to be used extremely carefully when anyone has a hormonal imbalance, because it will stress the adrenal glands and elevate cortisol levels high, and if your adrenal glands are already burnt out, it'll fry them. And then, you know, we have a problem in our culture of women are still afraid to eat fat, and they're still afraid of meat, which is a side effect from the First and Second World War, which I talk all about in you know, my various HLC programs. So they have to get over their fat phobia. The other thing is, very few of the women, I don't think I've ever evaluated a woman with these kind of hormonal problems that had a normal breathing pattern. And breathing is regulating your whole physiology. It's at the top of the totem pole. The only thing higher than breathing is your psyche or your soul. And that goes right back to the dream. But oftentimes there's so much anxiety over how do I look. Like the number of women I've had to teach to breathe because they would not let their belly go out when they inhaled. So they're breathing with an inverted breathing pattern or a chest breathing pattern, which excites the sympathetic system and keeps them all wound up. So you can be taking all the right supplements and eating all the right foods, but if your mind's all wound up and you can't breathe right and you're holding your guts in all the time so that you think you look like the, you know, current Twiggy of the day, the model of the day, you're disrupting your entire physiology. And so it's oftentimes, unfortunately, the simplest things that get avoided, largely due to social programming and chasing after empty dreams. You know, I always tell women, look, if you're looking for a man to love you, look for a man to love the person that you are, not the person you are painted up to be with your whatever your girdle is or your special clothes to make you look thinner and all this stuff. I'm only using that as a metaphor for putting so much energy into being something other than a natural, healthy woman. And when you look into these things, like I have for my whole life, believe me, women have tremendous psychological pressure on them, unfortunately largely induced by men. Who owns all the great advertising agencies? Men do. Who is the one that introduced the concept of high-heeled shoes in the workplace? Men did. And the list just goes on. So what you see is women are succumbing to the effects of social programming, which is really corporate marketing, and they can't do it. In New Zealand, this problem was so bad they started doing advertising campaigns because they had so many women with health problems like this. And they have when I first came to New Zealand, they had a great big billboard, and as you drove into town, it showed sort of a normal little bit chunky woman laying on her couch, scantily dressed, watching television, and on top of the sign it says there are only 9 women in the world are supermodels. Are you one of them? And that was the New Zealand government saying, quit trying to dress and act like supermodels and diet and starve yourself and push yourself to be beautiful at the expense of your own health. So this is why I have a PPS program. This is why I do a lot of deep psychological counseling and metaphysical exploration and spiritual work with people, because as I think I shared in our interview, much of these problems are really the expressions of deeper problems, much deeper problems, and everyone just wants to take another pill to get rid of the problem from the other pill. It never works, it never has worked, and it never will work, and the pain is a gift from the universe to show you when you're making the wrong choices. If it's painful for you to constantly make yourself beautiful because it takes up all your time and it's not giving you the reward you want, try just being yourself and know that anybody that is truly human can see beauty as beauty. But when it's painted on and guts are sucked in and pants are pulled on like they're painted on, and high heels and all the smoke and mirrors, then you suffer the effects of living a smoke and mirror life, including everything that we've been talking about. So how to get off the pill. Pay attention to those cycles. Stop stressing the hell out of yourself to be something that may not be even achievable and or may not be worth all the effort and may attract men to you that expect that of you. Now you're really trapped, because the day you let your hair down and take your girdle off and they see who you really are, they might be in shock. And men have their own pile of problems too, so I'm not picking on women. I could do a long dissertation on male stupidity and programming. I got 19-year-old men getting a hold of me to ask me how to get off of Viagra, which means we're in deep shit. When your young men can't even get an erection, it means, according to Pottinger's cats, we're on our way out. So then the obvious: eat real food, sleep. One of the most important things for a woman to do that's rebalancing her hormonal system is to get ample sleep. Sleep is essential for resetting the system. Coffee is the #1 killer of the female hormonal system that I see in society. Getting the stimulants out of the diet. Cleaning the body up. But my final tip is set a regimen, a daily regimen that includes getting up at a key time, preferably with the sun cycle. Set times for eating, for meditating or Tai Chi or working in. Have a consistent lunch time to the best of your ability. Keep your meal times consistent. Have time in your day for unbound play or no mind activities. Whatever that be. If all you want to do at the end of the day is just watch mindless television, then make that part of your day so you have time to unwind. Many of these people are so wound up, they come home, they can't unwind until 11, 12, 1 o'clock in the morning. So their sleep cycles are all screwed up. And then they can't get over these things. So the key thing is get clear on what your dream is, and then build your daily schedule around the important values that underlie a healthy life. And know there is a transition. There's a big transition, because a lot of the people that come to me say, oh, Paul, how the hell can I do that? I got to work this much. I got to make all this money. Yes. For what? I got 3 houses, or I got this, or I got kids in college. Good. How's that working? All those excuses. What you're doing is just telling yourself you've got to keep living the way you're living, and you're going to keep spending money on doctors till you're dead, and you're teaching your kids how to live the life of pain and unhappiness and imbalance. So there is a transition, and it does require a coach, and that's what holistic lifestyle coaches are for, is to help you walk through that transition process. And I think Angie talked about that in her presentation. You know, largely as a shaman, I'm a shaman too, and both of us spend most of our life working with people that have transitional stress. Now, certainly I could list all sorts of supplements and things like that, but that's not, again, that's not really the issue. That's a kind of an allopathic approach. All the supplements in the world won't do a damn thing for you if you don't get the stuff we just talked about, right?
Yeah.
Just make for species, that's all.
I've got another one here from Nancy, which I quite like because I know what the answer is going to be. If someone is dealing with a multitude of issues, parasites, adrenal issues, fungus, etc., what is the order of operations for dealing with these issues, i.e. what comes first?
Well, the most important thing for me in a case like this, I got to know what are the issues. I mean,
well, she's just written down how do you go about addressing a whole bunch. I think it sounds like she says, how do you go about addressing a whole bunch of problems that you're facing when you've got things like adrenal fatigue and a fungal infection and probably some other things going on there as well. That's all I've got written down from her.
Yes. But my point was, all these other things going on is a list of other things, and I can't determine which one of them is more important than the other until I know what the list is. But the key thing is, let me ask you a question, handsome young Dave. If someone is sleep deprived or does not have enough quiet in their life, what are some of the common symptoms that come out of that we see every day and are being mentioned right now?
Well, they'll be fatigued and they'll be tired.
And if you're fatigued and tired, you don't have enough energy to run your autonomic system or your organs, then you're going to have a lot of symptoms, aren't you?
Yep.
What's going to be the problems that are going to come from moving too much or too little?
You'll be burning out, or if you're not moving enough, then you won't be moving fluids and whatnot around your body properly. So it'll be more, your immune system won't work as well. And
you don't have enough energy because movement produces energy, right? If someone's diet's out of balance, won't all these problems pop up? And wouldn't 10 people in a room eating the wrong diet get 10 completely different symptom profiles because of their genetic and psychological uniqueness?
Yep.
Okay? What if you're living a life that you're not happy with? You're not married to the person you love anymore. You think you're stuck in your job. You're constantly at battles with family members, etc., etc., etc. Okay, well, won't that produce all the same symptoms?
Yeah.
Okay, so here we go. The answer to the question is, you get clear on what your dream is. You follow the teachings I give for individualizing your diet, which is right on my Primal Pattern Eating webinar audio recording. If you want a short, the quick and dirty version, the real training comes in HLC training for people that are really practicing it in the depth. But you can certainly learn to do it right off that audio. In other words, you have to establish values that support the person you're choosing to be now. The point I'm trying to drive home here is it doesn't matter what the symptoms are. All symptoms, unless you have an acute injury like falling off a bicycle or a rooftop or breaking your leg on a ski slope, and even then you have to go back to these basics. All of them emanate from an imbalance in who am I and what do I want to create in my life? Am I getting enough rest? Am I getting enough movement? And am I eating effectively for my biological and psychological needs? until those prerequisites are met, all forms of therapy are palliative, which means you're treating the symptom, you're not treating the cause, and you will spend the rest of your life running from doctor to doctor and gimmick to gimmick and the current fad to current fad, and you'll end up on my doorstep like many of them have. I've had people that have spent $500,000 on their problem trying to get fixed, spent their entire life savings. I've had people have to second mortgage houses and sell cars to come see me because they're at their wit's end, and I didn't have to use anything to get them better that wasn't in my book, How to Eat, Move, and Be Healthy, or the 4 Doctors. I rarely have to go beyond that.
Yeah, that's one thing I've learned.
The weakness of my approach, Dave, as I'm sure you know from practicing it, is
so simple.
Well, the weakness is not that it's so simple. Yes, it's simple. The weakness is it actually requires the patient to participate in their own healing. Our culture does not want to participate. They want to pay X number of dollars an hour, lay on the table, get up, walk out, and be brand new again, just like you take your car in for a tune-up or something like that. My approach is based on 31 plus years of hardcore study, research, practice, and coaching and consulting and therapizing thousands and thousands of people, and I made my living dealing with medical failures. That's how I became well known, is taking the people no one else knew what to do with, and this is how I do it. But the point I'm making is the challenge in my system is the person actually has to participate in their own life. And our culture is so numb and so into the concept of selling their pains to someone else or taking some magic bloody pill or juice and thinking everything's going to clear up, that they just bury themselves deeper and deeper. So all of these problems are gifts. It's your soul teaching you that you're playing a game that isn't working. And eventually we have to take responsibility for doing the things we've got to do to get healthy. And holistic lifestyle coaches in my system are trained to support people in that transition process. And as you know, I make it very clear to my practitioners, you must eat, sleep, move, breathe, and shit your teachings, or you're just another talking head. You're just another disease out there. That's why I say, if the person that's coaching you isn't appealing to you naked, then know that following their program will only produce exactly what they're showing you, because you are always wearing your choices.
Yeah. I remember the first time that I ever heard you speak, which was in Bondi in 2009, and you said something that was very powerful. You said, I don't really care what a trainer or a coach does in this session with their client. It's if I could follow that person out the door and watch what they go and eat and what they do for their next workout, that's how I'll know if I'm looking at a good trainer or a good practitioner or not. So yeah. I hear ya. Next question comes from Dana. She says, I have low body fat percentage and suffer from anxiety and poor sleep due to always running on adrenaline. I do fast days because I feel so good after them, as it gives my body a break from eating. I CrossFit and have to eat a lot because of it. Is this detrimental to my hormone function?
Well, that question is easily answered by just saying, how do I feel? How do I look? Do I sleep well? Is my sex energy good? Are my female parts working? There's all sorts of very natural ways to look at that. But from what she just said she's doing, I would say that she needs some support with some inner exploration, and probably needs some good education on how to balance an exercise program out, because I did hear CrossFit in there and I heard all sorts of stuff, but I didn't hear anything about meditation, working in, breathing, time for herself. What I heard was a classic Powerfrau type behavior.
I like that word. I'm going to start using that.
So my suggestion to her would be, go through my 4 Doctors ebook, follow the procedures, and then you'll clearly see what needs to be done, and it's a no-brainer. The amazing thing is I kind of laugh. I mean, I hate to say it, but Vidya can tell you the number of people that contact me from all over the world who are in dire straits, who will literally pay me any sum of money. It doesn't matter. I could charge $10,000 an hour, and people would get on jets and fly right over here. And Vidya always is taught to tell them, have you read Paul Chek's book, How Do You Be Healthy, and applied it as he taught in the book for 6 months? And if the answer is no, he wants you to know that when you get here, he will sit you down at his beautiful glass table in his library, and for $500 an hour, he's going to take you through this book and teach you how to use it. Okay? And the number of people that actually were very thankful that Vidya told her that and applied it, and then later send us an email or something saying, oh my God, or run into me in person, say, I'm so glad you told me that. That was so honest of you. I feel fantastic now. These are not hard things to address. It's really often looking behind what is the urge to have to CrossFit yourself, what is the urge to have to do all this stuff, what is the urge to have 3 cars when you only need 1, etc., etc. So it's not technical stuff. It's pretty simple.
Got ya. All right, so next question. This one's a little bit more tricky. This one's from Alexander. She said, my son is 8 and has brain scarring. Unknown cause, perhaps from concussion as a 1-year-old child, and as a result he has seizures in a form of an absent epilepsy. They last about half a minute and can get him confused, and then he is tired and then goes to sleep. Would you have any suggestions for healing, please? Doctors are considering operation and scar removal or anti-seizure medication, and I'm very afraid to go down that route. Warm regards, Alexandra.
Okay, did it say how old the child was?
8.
Okay.
He was 1.
Yeah, look up the name Barry Sternum. I think it's Sternum. He uses, and there's others that do this. There's many people around the world that use brain technologies to map your brain patterns. I did it myself. I used to have a lot of problems with my mind, forgetting everything I was talking about repeatedly. And I had 6 bad concussions racing motocross, not to mention all the boxing, kickboxing, and race car type crashes at high speeds. And they found that my brain actually completely stopped for 1/2 of a second every 4 seconds, like clockwork. So in a sense, I was in samadhi every 4 seconds and didn't even know it. But using these technologies, they can actually restructure and reintegrate the brain functions and integrate the left and right hemisphere. And I know it's Sturman or Sternum, one of the two. He's kind of one of the pioneers of that technology in his offices in Los Angeles. The next thing I would say is get that child to a NUCA chiropractor, National Upper Cervical Chiropractic Association, and make sure that that child does not have an atlas subluxation. 37% of all children born have an atlas subluxation from the birthing process, and if the atlas moves out of position more than 3/4 of 1 degree, it puts torque on the spinal cord and can disrupt information going from the brain to the body and the body to the brain, lead to all sorts of problems. That should be cleared just because it will stop the body from having its natural healing resources available to it. Next, I would have that child tested for, have a comprehensive toxicity panel, like an environmental toxicity panel, to make sure the child doesn't have mercury poisoning or heavy metal poisoning. And then one of the first things I would do is I would get my healing fungal and parasite infection program and apply everything to that child. Those types of cases can come from parasites, and parasites do get in the brain. I've seen many cases of brain parasites. If you do some research on the internet and talk to people that do a lot of work with parasites, many people have had parasites. I've heard of entire tumors being pulled out of the brain the size of an orange that turned out to be parasite larvae or encasements of parasites. And when you talk about scarring like that, parasites leave scars. They bore into you. They eat into you. In my healing fungal and parasite infections, I actually have pictures of liver flukes boring into the liver. You can see all the inflammation and scarring right where they're at. And with what kids eat today and the environment that they're in, so these things have to be cleared. So brainwave technology, remove funguses and parasites and make all the diet and lifestyle changes absolutely essential. everything I've talked about, but it's in that healing fungal and parasites infection. Get the atlas checked for sure, and do a environmental toxicity panel through a functional medicine practitioner, and find out what's inside that body. I know from personal experience, mercury can also do things like that, and it's as common as white bread because it's in people's teeth, it's in vaccinations. If you've gotten vaccinations from a medical doctor, you probably got mercury toxicity. And it really scrambles your brain. I had a good case of mercury toxicity as well, and the product that I use that I highly recommend is metal-free. It used to be at metalfree.com. If you type that in, it'll probably get you there anyhow. But that's a case, again, that needs to be handled by someone that's got some skill. But I wouldn't be surprised if miraculous things happen just with the advice I just gave. Personally, I wouldn't take the child in for surgery. I'd get busy on that and give it a few months applying those principles. And I've seen lots of cases, with these types of symptoms over the years. Not exactly, but in that genre. And oftentimes they do clear up, get you all the way. Then you need to find someone, that has a higher level of skill that can look at the child not only physically, but shall we say metaphysically or spiritually, because there can be hidden factors that aren't getting addressed that need to be looked at in cases. So that would be my tips for that one.
All right. You said you'd be on for an hour. Do you have time for one more question, maybe, Paul?
Yeah, I was just going to tell you, I can't go too much longer before I pee my pants. So I can do another one, though. I've got enough sphincter strength for that.
So this one's from Kelly. She says, my question is fruitarianism safe, i.e. eating high amounts of fruit all day followed by a meal at night which consists only of salad, vegetables, and a small amount of good fat? There are many well-known fruitarians who have healed illnesses such as diabetes and skin issues, to name a few. Is it the fat that holds the sugar in the blood which would explain why they eat only small amounts of good fats? I've tried the opposite, or I suppose this is why paleo diets that eat small amounts of fruit and have a high fat would hold sugar in the blood. Can both diets be right and equally healing? As a new health coach, I'd love to hear your thoughts so I can advise my female clients more safely. Thanks in advance, Kelly. Okay,
first of all, fruitarianism, vegetarianism, veganism, carnivorism. Be very warned when you hear ism. Ism means dogma. It means do this or you're wrong. I have listened to all the stories about fruitarianism and all the other isms, and my schedule is full of people with isms. First of all, if you look at the problems caused by fungal infections and parasites, the whole concept of fruitarianism is absolutely dangerous. That doesn't mean that it hasn't worked for somebody, but those are very unique circumstances. I can tell you, for every one person who is successful with that approach, there'll be 99 people behind them with big trouble. Second of all, it completely and utterly ignores the concepts of biochemical individuality, genetic individuality, psychological individuality, physiological individuality, and all a person has to do is look at Weston A. Price's book, Nutrition and Physical Degeneration, and follow that with Roger Williams' book, Biochemical Individuality, and all those systems are just exploded. And the number of sick people with isms running around out there is amazing. That said, each one of them can be used as a tool by a skilled practitioner to make changes and to provide certain nutrients or certain environments for healing. In other words, I have nothing against any of those isms. To me, they're tools in a toolbox, but they have to be used with a careful monitoring of how the body-mind is responding, or what, a good example is I've had many people come to me with cancer that were vegetarians, but they already had cancer before. They were eating a standard American diet or whatever, a carnivore diet or whatever you want to call it, They got sick. They went to a doctor who said, you need to become a vegan or a vegetarian to get over your cancer. They got over cancer, but 5 to 7 years later, they got cancer again. Now they're all confused because they were sure they were eating and living correctly according to that philosophy. The point is, a vegetarian diet, as an example, is a detoxification diet. It helps put fiber in the diet. People eating vegetarian diets get a lot more vegetables. They usually eat a lot more raw food. They got a lot more enzymes coming into their body, and they stop eating meat, which is one of the most toxic things you can put in your body unless it's free-range organic. And even wild-caught fish today is full of radiation and mercury and all that stuff. So if a person's not using a 4-day rotation diet, like I show in my book, How to Eat, Move, and Be Healthy, they can get themselves in a lot of trouble. So these things, like I say, they have an application, but there must be a constant relationship with the body, and a person has to have wisdom to know, enough about nature and how it works. For example, if you start throwing a bunch of fruit inside of a body that's not designed to eat fruit as a staple, you can do that with a chimpanzee or something that, is designed for that. Once you understand what your body needs, and you understand that your body's needs can change radically from meal to meal. I can be a vegetarian in the morning and the carnivorous animal at night after a heavy deadlift session. So personally, I feel that those philosophies are dangerous in the hands of a person without an extensive amount of training and understanding of how the body and the mind work. A good grounding in hormonal physiology, biochemistry. But to conclude my story, I have to put people back on a diet, usually that includes some degree of animal flesh, lots of fats when they're sick, and typically quality fats, coconut oil, butter, real fat, real animal fat. And never in my entire career have I ever had or wanted to put anybody on a fruitarian diet, because it would just be suicide. And look, you can find people that are breatharians out there. Okay, good. So does that mean you're going to just stop eating and become a breatharian because some yogi who spent the last 777 lifetimes evolving spiritually to be able to get enough prana out of the air to charge his body up can do it? In other words, we have to have a little common sense. And many of these people that I see, professing their fruitarian or vegetarian health to the skilled eye don't look that healthy to me. They become what I would call maniacs or fanatics. And fanatics are like flies buzzing around your head. So in conclusion, I have nothing against anything that's used intelligently. But after 31 years of hard work and study, I can tell you that the most intelligent approach is to use all of them based on symptom logging, muscle testing, or soul connection, so you know exactly what your body needs, and your body gives you your report card every minute of the day. Doesn't it? Yeah. Every day. Your energy levels, your sexual performance, your mental clarity, your skin, your bowel movements, your urination, your breathing, your ability to calm your mind, those are your report card, right? And look at all the questions we've been dealing with today. Those are all the report cards. And I love supporting people, but what I'm telling you, it's not about what you take. It's about engaging with your body and having a real relationship with it. And instead of seeing your body as something you're trying to fix, shift your perspective to seeing your body as something that's trying to have a relationship with you. And symptoms from your body are no different than a baby crying because it's hungry or it needs to move, or something is bothering it, but mommy's job is to listen to the symptom. But mom doesn't walk over there and say, quit crying so much, here, take this pill, right? Well, we hope they don't. And we have to remember that our bodies have to be loved and nurtured and listened to. When my body talks to me, I listen. I want to know what it's saying. Many people think I'm a fanatic. I'm not a fanatic. My God. I don't make health complicated or hard. That's boring. I like to smoke tobacco and do my herbs and enjoy my medical marijuana and do my shamanic practices and, I don't have any fixation on any of it. To me, it's all part of the process. Again, it's not about being perfect or being this or that or following some dogma. It's about being a whole person and not having rigid, fixed, thou shalt only eat vegetarian, only eat meat, or eat piles of meat. I mean, a good example of this, just to kind of conclude this point, go to a Weston A. Price conference and just walk around and look at the bodies of the people who are certainly eating high-quality food, because that's what the place is all about. But what you can see is they, too, are eating way too much fat, way too much dairy, way too much protein, and it's messing their bodies up. You see inflammation. They're not paying attention to the fact when they're eating all these grains and breads. Yes, they're homemade, but it can be death by homemade as well. You can kill yourself on the best meat in the world, the best fish in the world, the best anything. It's really about being brave enough to get the report card. And when you get the report card, whether it be pimples in the mirror or joints that are aching, then if you can't change, it means you have an addiction. And Joseph Campbell said it beautifully. If you want to know what your God is, ask yourself what you cannot do without for 2 or 3 days. If it's coffee, that's your God. If it's sugar, that's your God. And so what we have now is a culture of people that worship poison with the fervor of someone in spiritual worship of the divine, yet continue to ignore that their body's telling them that their worship is not worship at all, because it's breaking down the one and only place we know is ours for sure, which is our body. If people just got honest with themselves and looked in the mirror every day and said, okay, today I'm going to eat like a vegetarian, I'm going to pay attention to how I feel, I'm going to look at the fine-tuning chart in Paul's book, Eat, Move, and Be Healthy, and I'm going to write notes down, and boy, look, I felt better or I felt worse. Okay, tomorrow if I felt worse, I eat less meat, or I eat meat that isn't so lean if I ate lean meat yesterday. Remember, all these diets, look, there's thousands and thousands of diet books, which means people are obviously confused. Every one of those diets works for some people at some time. But then inevitably the Atkins diet stops working, you got to go to another diet. Then all of a sudden you feel better again. Then you go to another diet. Oh, I feel better again. Well, that's the very slow way to do individualized eating, or what Bill Walcott would call metabolic typing. You're just doing it extremely slowly and possibly ruining yourself in the process. The truth is, you might eat an Atkins diet for lunch and a South Beach diet for dinner and fasting for breakfast, or any combination of them, and the only way you ever figure that out is to stand in that mirror, be honest with yourself. If people want to learn about this stuff, I talk about this kind of stuff in my blogs all the time, in my video blogs. And that's the road to health, because in the process of healing your body, you take command of your mind and you integrate your body and your mind, and you become a healthy whole person who has a sense of humor, who can enjoy life and doesn't get fixated on any dogmas or pills, and enjoys the process of exploring themselves as opposed to trying to get rid of the truth of their philosophy.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of these questions that I've got coming up here it sounds like people are looking for information to kind of support their choices or what they think is right. But when I first read How to Move and Be Healthy, I was surprised, because it was a diet book that said, I don't really know what you're supposed to eat, but here's how you go and figure it out for yourself, which is exactly what a diet book should say, in my opinion.
Anything else is a prescription. And if you're working with robots, all of the same manufacturer, you can do that, right? If you've got a manual for a Chevrolet Impala or a GMC pickup truck with a V8 engine, then the firing order is 184366572 for a small block engine, and it needs a 12-volt battery, and it has to have ignition, compression, and fuel to run, and the timing is usually 1 degree before top dead center, and you can apply that to all that model and make a car. But the problem is we're absolutely individual. Everyone in this world has different fingerprints. Everyone in this world is as different on the inside as they are on the outside. And once we get past playing these games that obviously aren't working, we're the smartest people with the most degrees, and we've got more health professionals and more exercise professionals than we've ever had per capita in the history of man, and we are the sickest people we have ever been. I don't consider that a sign of intelligence. I consider that a sign of relinquishing control of yourself to be told what to do by other people that perceive themselves to be experts that are often in as much trouble as you're in because they're living the same philosophy they're teaching. And part of being healthy means to be an adult. You have to take responsibility for the choices you're making, and there's no escaping that, and no magic pill will help you, and no therapist can take you further than they've taken themselves. And that's why I said I like to do the things I like to do. I don't mind partying. I don't mind staying up late once in a while, but I listen to my body, and it gives me the feedback that I need. And if I'm making choices that are stressing my body, I know I'm doing it. I accept responsibility for it, and I don't need anybody's help to fix it. Right? Look, I've got broken bones and all sorts of stuff from riding bulls in the rodeo and being in boxing matches, kickboxing matches, motocross racing, but I don't run around saying, poor me, how do I race a motorcycle without getting hurt? If you're going to play in the mud, you're going to get muddy. The point is that my philosophy is about engaging fully in life, but being aware of the choices you're making and accepting responsibility and knowing that the same thing you did that got you in trouble, if undone, usually gets you out of trouble. Staying up too late at night, if it's causing problems, quit doing it. Eating too much sugar or too much fruit, if you want a fungal infection, a parasite infection, and then maybe being someone with scar tissue in their brain and autism or seizures or whatever it might give you, keep it up. I love people enough to be honest with them, and I know some people probably get the feeling that I'm just, putting it all back on them. Well, I am, but not for any other reason than I'm being honest with people. And if I was ever to have another child, I would train that child to be intelligent, self-sufficient, and understand the principles of nature, or keep them the hell out of Western school systems and medical doctors' offices unless they had a broken bone or something.
Yeah, I agree. So that is a wrap for everyone who's listening. If you want to go and learn more from Paul about how you can take control of your own health and become really your own expert in your body, he's put together the 1234 program. You can get that at the Chek1234.com. That's CHEK, and then the numbers 1234. And he's discounted it for you as well until February 27. If you use the code FHS1234, then you can get a 50% discount off. Paul, I can't thank you enough. That was amazing, as always. I'm sure there'll be a lot of people who'll be watching this on replay, but I've got messages here from people in the Netherlands and Singapore and all across the world. So you're helping change the world, buddy. You're doing well.
Thank you. Is that printed, that discount printed on a website or something? When you said it, the internet broke up. So when you were giving the code at the end, I'm worried people may not have heard it.
I'll send it out by email, but the code is FHS1234, and if you put that in when you go to thechek1234.com, that's CHEK, and then the numbers 1234.com, then it will work. But I'll send it out in an email.
All right. Well, listen, I really want everybody to know I have tremendous love and compassion for all of them and for humanity and the world, and it is hard for me to be so honest, because I know for a lot of people it's such a huge transition from the life that we've been conditioned to live in. But there's nothing more rewarding at the end of the day than knowing that you have the tools to navigate life and take care of yourself, and knowing that doctors are there when you really need them, And, for me, coaching is about having an adult relationship with people. And when I'm coaching kids, then I coach them as kids, and I understand that they're kids. So I just want to conclude by letting people know, remember, your challenges are your spiritual growth. Pain produces consciousness. If the world was perfect all the time, we'd be completely numb. And take the opportunity to let your pain guide you into a new level of self-realization. It always leads you to people that open your mind and your eyes to new and interesting things. You meet new people. The injuries I've had, which have been plenty, have been the greatest teachers to me. And the illnesses that I've had taught me where I was making mistakes and gave me the knowledge and the skills to, be an effective teacher and have empathy for people. So I have empathy for everybody, but as Osho says, there's no such thing as a sin except doing something twice when you know it didn't work the first time.
I'm not going to lie, I've been guilty of that before.
That's okay, as long as you're hip for it. Like I said, if you want to party every night of the week and you know it's you doing it, then we know who you are because you're not complaining and begging for someone to take your misery away. You just enjoy partying. And like I said, if you're going to race motorcycles, you're going to get hurt. If you're going to party, you're going to get a hangover and feel like shit. And if that's, look, it's either bumps, bruises. I mean, people get sex injuries having great fun in sex, but they don't run around complaining about it. So, if you're happy with what you've created, then you don't need my help or Dave's help or anybody's help. But if you want to feel better in your body and in your mind, then pay attention to what you're creating, because, there is no God but God. I worship everything and everyone. The one making the choices is the grand creator, and that's really what it ends up being at the end of the day.
That is true. Hey, Paul, thanks so much for your time, and I'll see you in April when you're here for HLC3, all right?
You got it, partner. Keep up the great work. I'm excited to see you guys sharing all this information with people and being a vehicle for good, honest information and doing your part to help make the garden a little more beautiful for everybody.
Thanks, Paul. I'll chat to you soon.
You got it, buddy. Stay well. Goodbye, everybody.